just want to take a moment here to talk about something I saw on television or on YouTube. It was a conversation about, it was kind of a debate between a person named Peter Joseph, and Stefan Molyneux. And Peter Joseph is apparently an ideologue that talks about things that I think are probably common in academia. I call it a neo-Marxist ideology. Neo-Marxist in the sense that it's taking ideas and modernizing and sort of deconstructing things so that he can make it apply in a way that maybe pure Marxist writings don't. So I'm going to go through a few of these quickly here, just as a, just by way of kind of information. And in his language here, it has all of the sort of earmarks of cult-like beliefs. There's a lot of self-reinforcing language. There's a lot of, I would call it phony intellectualizing of things, and a lot of terms, a lot of sort of special purpose terms or predefined terms that are create a sort of vocabulary and a semantic that is unique to this whole ideology. I think a lot of people get sucked into this, and they think that this is extremely intelligent or well thought out or something. And it actually, if you go through and take the time, which you'll never be given the time in an academic setting and probably in any other setting, to properly analyze and deconstruct what these people are saying, a lot of it is just crap. So my view of this, in terms of what I've seen, is I would read it the way I call it here, is it's self-reinforcing ideological phrases designed to justify the end in mind. In this case, it's a utopian kind of an end. Ideas that inevitably lead to a utopian vision that fails to take into account the common sense wisdom of human experience, and thereby fails to recognize or accurately describe any number of conditions, factors, or inherent human characteristics, and under these misapprehensions propose solutions that are invalid no matter how human society is organized. And this person, Peter Joseph, I think is involved with the Zeitgeist movies, and I agree with a lot of his premises in terms of some of the problems we see in society. Even Stefan Molyneux agrees with the problems as he defines them. But agreeing with the problems doesn't necessarily mean you're going to agree with the person's interpretation of causes. And I think really what you see here is the language being used in a very kind of insidious or overly intellectualized way, and with terms that are either poorly defined or meaningless, leading to really trying to lead the person to a certain end. In other words, it's a lot of language, a lot of constructed ideas and concepts that are built in such a way as to lead you to sort of surrender to the end that this person wants you to take into account or wants you to accept. Some of these phrases, just so you're familiar with them, he uses these things constantly in a sort of quick talking, almost chattering way. Scarcity-driven ethos, structural violence, game theory competition, historical failure to recognize the purpose of the state, imposed ethical systems, fundamental operant conditioning, abandonment of all historical philosophical works, mutable necessity to draw power and discount the well-being of others. Society based on true human equality is impossible because the psychological reinforcers are not there. Truncated distinctions, certain ideas which appear to have integrity are found to be in truth too narrow in their consideration to be deemed viable philosophically or empirically. Well, you could apply that to his ideas. You could apply that to any idea. It's a big fancy way of saying, I don't agree with your idea, or I don't think it's sufficient in scope. The next one is the true underlying meaning and purpose claimed to be represented is substantially misrepresented, and hence the concept becomes empirically false. This is an overly intellectualized, phony way of saying he doesn't agree with something. But you can see in an academic setting where you've got an authority figure spouting off all of this kind of intellectualized language and semantics and vocabulary, everybody is going to sit there in awe and think that this is somehow wisdom coming down from on high. And I think it's just worth. I wanted to make these kind of observations so that if you encounter this kind of opposition, and when we're talking about, communism or some kind of utopian vision, whatever it may be, socialism or some kind of completely, tearing up society as we know it, to replacing what we call, a free and open society where we talk about, free market or a market economy. We talk about natural law, and we talk about liberty. It's not to say that we have a perfect society or will ever have a perfect society, but when you look at how communism, for example, was implemented or tested in various societies in the last over 100 years, and the utter failures and the horrors and the slaughter that have resulted from it, this is just completely, in the clouds kind of utopian idealism that, while it might be admirable that a person is looking for some kind of perfect society, but the reality just isn't there. If you're going to look for a society that completely, equalizes all resources, that completely intelligently and fairly and equitably distributes every resource and efficiently uses every resource, it just isn't going to happen. And if you're looking for a society where you want to eliminate all risk and all waste and all duplication of effort or however you want to look at it, it's just not going to happen. If you look at his case tries to make is that we have advanced as a civilization to such a point where we have this sufficient wealth in order to provide everything for all people on the planet and have, resources left over. The problem is you have cultural conflicts, you have geopolitical conflicts, you have human frailty, you have corruption, you have people that are not well-intentioned, you have greed, you have all kinds of things that are going to preclude that no matter how society is organized. And so I think the idea that we can somehow build up from scratch some kind of a new society and replace it with this thing is just not realistic. Nonetheless, we need to understand a little bit about how they think so that we have a way to counter it and we kind of know what they're doing when we hear this kind of language. But I think a lot of the radical left, a lot of these people are sucked into this idea. And if you have a society that you have somehow reformed from scratch into some new thing, you're nevertheless going to have power structures. You're going to have people that are, lusting after the ability to control everything, and they're going to be looking out for their own interests. It's also the idea built into some of his statements here is that he's thrown away the history of philosophical thought. He thinks it's irrelevant. And essentially what they're doing is setting themselves up as some kind of intellectual elite who can re-engineer society, who can re-engineer everything, and who are brilliant and wise and expert, have great, wondrous expertise, geniuses who can somehow make all of this work. And it's really a big lie, and it's going to do nothing but lead to some of the things we've seen in the last 100 years.